Chapter 4. To make a big omelet, you have to break a big egg. Neef's rules for changelings. I hid the Casnaperies stone flask among the magazines in the window seat. At first, I kept taking it out and shaking it so I could hear the keep awake sloshing inside, then unstoppering it and sniffing. After a few days, the potion didn't smell as good as it had at first. Not bad, exactly, but kind of metallic. There wasn't anybody I could ask whether it could go rotten, except the Casnapari, and I wasn't about to do that, so I tried not to think about it. Instead, I thought about the solstice dance, and I thought about how the other mortal changelings got to attend it, and I didn't. I thought about how I'd complained to Astris about how hard it was to be the only mortal around. All she had said was that I should be glad I was special. And I thought about the special part. Changelings who had come before me, the ones she had such bad luck with. With all these questions buzzing around in my head, I hardly dared to talk to Astris for the fear I'd flirt out the wrong thing. I spent more and more time away from the castle, hanging out the dairy and sitting for hours the Willow Bay with my feet in the lake. My daily lessons in folklore were not as much fun as they used to be. Neefs, what's wrong? Astris asked me one morning when things had gone worse than unusual. Wrong? I asked, my heart thudding uncomfortably. I can only remember 2 ways of outwitting a pisky. That's all. Why do I need to learn 3 ways anyway? Isn't one enough? Astris' whiskers were served. Not if the moon's full. And it's not just that. You left 3 of the most important storm spirits off this list of destructive nature spirits. I haven't seen you this distracted since you were very small. She fixed me with her ruby eyes, her whiskers quivering with worry. Whatever's on your mind, pet, you can tell me. When I was little, I learned that when I cried, it made the folk fall over laughing, even Astris. Needless to say, I didn't cry much. Lately, however, I've been choking up over nothing. Mortified, I got up and went to the kitchen window so I could dry my tears and come with a story that would answer Astrid's questions and get me out of the castle. I've got a date with Puck and Ariel, I said. They're going to race around the earth. I'm supposed to judge who gets back to the mulberry tree first. They're waiting for me. That's why I'm distracted. I didn't really expect Astris to fall for this. Maybe she didn't. Maybe her whiskers were suspicious, but I didn't look at them. I just stood there with my back to her until she said, Very well, Neef. Go ahead and meet your friends, but I'll expect you to spend the evening on your pisky lore, reviewing the storm spirits as well, the 6 signs of demon, and the short list of traditional boogeymen. You need to know these things. I know, Astris, I said. Thanks. And I pelted out of the kitchen across the courtyard as if the wild hunt was on my knees. Then I climbed the mulberry tree and stayed there the rest of the day, feeling awful. After that, Astris pretty much handed over my education to the puka. I thought this would be better. He never made me memorize lists or write essays comparing and contrasting the protective spirits from 3 different folklore traditions. He was more into the fun stuff, like catching leprechauns and tricking demons. But he wasn't nearly as patient as Astris. Plus, I pinched so many fits at him that he threatened to take back his tail hair. All in all, it was a good thing that the solstice was getting nearer. The days grew gradually longer, and the folk grew busier and more excited the way I realized they always did twice each year. The water nymphs went on and on about the fancy gowns they were making out of the water weeds and leaves. The leprechauns were snowed under the and the leprechauns were snowed under the orders for dancing shoes. The the clincher was what I saw. Folk lined up outside Leoneth's door, waiting for dancing lessons. One evening, I even saw her twirling with an ogre in sweatpants, dodging his clawed feet and yelling, "Lightly," I said, "trip lightly." When I asked them what was doing, they all pretend that literally says, when I asked them what was doing, they all pretended they were too busy to talk to me. I'm sorry. Finally, it was the day before the solstice. I still didn't know how Estrus put me to sleep every year, and I wasn't completely sure to keep awake hadn't gone bad. Estrus had exploded when I knocked her bowl of cookie dough onto her newly scrubbed floor and threw me out of the castle until bedtime. I was sitting on the rock overlooking the turtle pond, trying to read the rain-swollen copy of a book I found under a bush. It was about all these weird kids who get to be friends because the popular kids hate them, which kind of reminded me of what me and the folk, only without other changelings to make friends with. The book stopped suddenly in the middle of the sentence, leaving all the weird kids' problems unsolved. I threw the book into the pond and propped my chin on one hand and watched the sunset glide the windows of the Metropolitan Museum across the meadow. My eyes caught a flutter of scarlet crossing Central Park Central towards me. "Oh," I said to myself, "there's the Sandman." And then I got it. The Sandman isn't park folk. He lives in the city where his job is to go out into the mortal world every night and put little children to sleep. He and Estrus were old friends, and he always visited at the solstice. Being a mortal child, I pretty much fell asleep as soon as I said hello to him and never woke up until morning. I couldn't believe I hadn't figured it out sooner. There was no time to waste. I jumped up and tore across the courtyard into the castle, and up the spiral stairs into my room, where I dug the flask of the keep awake out of the window seat. The Casperi keep awake potion was cold and oily and tasted like a safety pins and old socks. It was all I could do to not to spit it out, but I managed to swallow. The potion hit my stomach like a lightened candle. 1 minute, I was ordinary changeling. The next, I was super changeling, smarter than your average genius and very, very, very wide awake. Just in time, too. Astrus was calling me. "Neef, Neef, the Sandman's here. Come down and say hello." I was tempted to yell down to her, so I didn't care and see what happened next. But now was not the time to start acting weirder than usual. So I yelled, "Coming," instead. The next part was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I felt like I could cartwheel all the way downstairs and into the kitchen. but I didn't want to make Astra suspicious. One step at a time, I told myself. Don't rush. What's with you? Astra said, when she saw me dragging my feet from step to step. You look like you're about to fall over. I thought fast, really fast. Tag with the Lashi, I said. This afternoon, he turns himself into a wolf. I'm pooped. Astris gave me a doubtful look. You'd better go straight to bed, then. But say hello to the Sandman first. The Sandman spread his scarlet cloak with both arms, unveiling baggy turquoise pants and gold shirt. The colors made my eyes hurt. He smiled at me sleepily. Happy solstice, Neve. With the keep awake fizzing in my head, it took all my self-control to say, Happy solstice to you, Sandman, and allow him to fold the scarlet cloak around me like a tent. Dreams, sand, settled into my eyes and mouth. I yawned and rubbed my eyes with that much dream sand around. You just have to yawn. Keep awake or no keep awake. It wasn't hard to stumble up the stairs, fall into bed, and curl up with my eyes closed. What was hard was keeping them closed and breathing evenly when Astris jumped up on the bed and made sure I was really asleep. I felt her whiskers twitch across my nose, and I couldn't help giving a little snort. But I might have done that even if I was been sleeping. Out like a light, she said. I thought I smelled coffee on her breath, but I must have been imagining it. Coffee? The Sandman sounded shocked. Not our little Neef. Not so little anymore, Astrid said. She's growing up, Morpheus. I know the signs. Soon she's going to do something she shouldn't, and things will get ugly. Well, it hasn't happened yet, the Sandman said, cheerfully. Come on, Astris. I can hear the trees turning up. We don't have to be late. Just to make sure they were really gone, I stayed on the bed with my eyes closed, twitching as the keep awake threw off the dream sand, listening to the fairy music drifting through my open window, counting as slowly as I could do 200. At about 75, the music pulled me out of the bed and over the nearest window. With dusk blue among the trees, the dance was getting started. Folk all shapes and sizes were dancing on the paths, on the rocks, even up in the sky, where tiny winged fairies and peris floated like a dandelion fluff among the ornithal dragons and bright winged gordas. Fairy lights glittered off polished tusks and scales and horns and jewels. I saw a pair of squirrels prance past, their tails brushed and fluffy bows. A huge black kelpie flashed its glided hoofs. Red cap was shiny with flesh blood, and a swan maidens from Lincoln Center worn their swan skins over their white shoulders like feathery cloaks. The music came from everywhere, fiddles and pipes and quick beating drums. I leaned out of my window so far I almost fell out. I couldn't wait to be down there with the rest of them. Doing with dwarfs, converting with kobolds, pirouetting with piskies, waltzing with werebears. Maybe my heart beat fast, maybe even carpeting with changelings. I skinned out of my jeans and t-shirt into my only dress, It was green spider silk with floaty skirt and leaves and flowers woven into it, and I found it a few days early, laid it out on the bench in the Shakespeare garden. I had an idea that the moss woman must have left it for me because of not being able to grant my real wish. It smelled a little damp leaf mold, but it was the prettiest thing I've ever worn in my life. Downstairs, I paused to check myself out in the hall mirror. My hair was its usual explosion fizzy curls. I was definitely round in the middle, and my legs and feet were not as clean as Astra's would have liked. But the spider silk dress turned me into a woodsy park fairy. I ran out of the courtyard, and the Shakespeare fairies were dancing gavots and lace ruffs and doublets and stiff, drum-shaped skirts. Puck winked at me then whirled away. Had he recognized me, or was he just being Puck? Who cared? I was going to I'm sorry. I was going to dance in Central Park Central and nothing was going to stop me. I edged past the reveals and made it down to steps on the foot of the cliff. I was almost past the turtle pond. Then something caught my leg and hung on tight. Looking down, I saw the water rat, almost unrecognizable himself in the black dinner jacket and red bow tie. Oh my God, I'm struggling. What are you doing, Mr. Rat? What are you doing? Joining in the dance, I said. Or I will be, if you'll just let go. The water rat tightened his grip. Oh, you don't want to do that, youngster. Central Park Central's full of tourists at the midsummer. Giants, wyverns, vampires. Much better to observe from the distance. I understand there's an excellent view from the castle. Shall I take you up there? No way, I said. This is my first solstice, and I want to dance. Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't like that at all. I was tempted to kick this water rat away, but I wasn't that quite crazy. Hell yeah. But I wasn't that crazy quite. Why not? You're immortal, he said carefully. Mortals are delicate, and the folk get wild as the night wears on. I didn't like to mention it before, but unsupervised mortals can dance themselves to death at the solstice dance. You wouldn't want that to happen, would you? Think how upset Astris would be. Everything clicked into place. The Sandman, Astris hiding a dance from me, even the fate of the other part changelings. It was like the story of the sleeping debutant, where the mayor passed a law against books because of the evil fairy had said that his daughter would die on the paper cut. Those part changelings must have done something stupid and got themselves killed, as Astris had decided to keep me away from the dance entirely. Didn't she trust me? Didn't she know I could take care of myself? I know what you're trying to do, Mr. Rat. But really, it's okay. I'm not a complete idiot, and I won't dance myself to death. I'm going to look out for my other mortal changelings. I'll be fine. The rat's whiskers weren't as expressive as Astra's, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Why should you want to do that? They won't know anything about the park, you know. What would you talk about? And what if they hurt you? Mortals don't always get along with other mortals, I hear. No, it would be best all around if you return to the castle. With all this going on? Are you nuts? Listen, Mr. Rat, I appreciate the warning and everything, but you're not my fairy godfather. Just butt out, okay? The water rat looked grave. Listen here, niece. I'm just trying to keep you from making an awful ass of yourself. But if you're determined, you're determined, and I can't change your mind. Determined. It might be wise, however, for you to watch for a while before joining in. The solstice dance is powerful magic, and you need to understand the pattern or may be serious consequences. Besides, he said particularly, you'll never find a changeling by leaping into a huge, moving crowd and hoping to bump into one. Even hopped up on the music and keep awake. I had to admit the water rat had a point. In the end, I promised that I'd climb a tree and watch from above until I was sure I saw the pattern, and then he let me go. I was a little hurt that he waited until I found a suitable tree before he joined the dance himself. I may not like the rules, but I do keep my promises. I swung myself up to a nice sturdy branch at the about a giant's eye level and put my back against the trunk. The music ran through me like a keep awake. Water Rat hadn't said anything about sitting still, so I bounced until the whole tree creaked and shook. Stop that, rustled the tree angrily. I shouldn't have put up with this kind of nonsense, not on the solstice night. Keep it up and I'll snap. I said I was sorry and stopped bouncing. I couldn't keep my feet still, though. No matter how hard I tried, the music was like 1,000 instruments from 100 different musical traditions, all playing at once. It didn't have anything that even remotely resembled a tune, and I couldn't quite catch the beat. But I had to move anyway, or bust. So I swung my legs and twitched my shoulders and studied the dance for some clue to its pattern. There, had to be one. The water rat couldn't lie, but I couldn't figure it out. For all I could tell, the solstice dance was nothing but a bunch of folk prancing around at random, waving their arms or flippers or tails or horns, however they felt like. For a long time, I watched a bunch of leprechauns with emerald green mohawks bopping up and down in a tight cluster, but I still couldn't make sense of it. Then I saw Pick Powler. She was spinning, her green rags waving like rotten lettuce leaves. As she turned, she looked up and showed me every pointy teeth in her head. My heart thumped uncomfortably under my spider silk dress, but I grinned right back at her. Peg circled away, grinning like a goon, and I returned to studying the dance. I noticed an odd kind of ripple moving through the crowd. The ripple came nearer, turning into a line of heads bobbing slightly out of the sync with the beat. I wondered what kind of folk they were. They might have been elves or shapeshifters, except for being red-faced and kind of heavy-looking. As they danced past my tree, I noticed that they were painting and gleaming with sweat. A woman tripped, and a man stumbled over her. Folk don't trip. Folk don't sweat. Folk don't get tired. I find immortal changelings.